Welcome back. We start a news bulletin from the US, where southern states have started reimposing lockdowns as a surge in COVID-19 infections pushed the tally to over 2.5 million. Brazil has recorded 1,109 deaths and over 38,000 cases in the past 24 hours. Worldwide, the death toll has crossed 498,000 with over 9.9 million infections. More in this report.
Mass gatherings and the lifting of lockdowns have caused a spike in COVID-19 in the southern states of the US. The country continues to lead in the number of deaths and cases worldwide, as Florida and Texas report record infections in the past 24 hours. The increase has led state officials to tighten restrictions on businesses again. Over in China, authorities have begun massive nucleic acid tests on university teachers and students after a recent resurgence of the infections in Beijing.
This round of tests lays a basis for us to normalize the epidemic control and prevention work for the next step. We will carry out the tests those who volunteer to get tested in our educational system. In the next step, we will implement this principle for the 3 million people in educational system to lay a good foundation for the resumption of the teaching order.
Ireland says it will maintain a 14-day quarantine for travellers for the British mainland in July, even as it plans to ease travel restrictions. Meanwhile, a global fundraising meeting has raised over $6.9 billion from the US, EU and numerous other countries to fight the virus.
Aujourd'hui, c'est une nouvelle étape qui commence.
Today, a new stage is beginning. We must pool and amplify our efforts so that the vaccine, the treatments, and our health system in general will protect us quickly and better against COVID. This shared action is our common good. So let's mobilize, let's refuse an every man by himself approach. Let's continue to move forward together.
Australia's Victoria state has also implemented mandatory COVID-19 tests for returning travellers. Elsewhere, South Korea has reported 62 cases in the last 24 hours, raising concerns over a second wave of COVID-19 through the country.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, the number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 200,000 as more than 4,000 tested positive in the past 24 hours. The health ministry said 83 new deaths were recorded, raising the toll to 4,118. The ministry said over 92,000 people have recovered from the virus, while there are still more than 105,000 active cases nationwide. Out of these, the province of Punjab has reported more than 78,000 cases, while Sindh has registered over 78,000 infections. The ministry says some 1.2 million tests have been conducted, with 25,013 in the last 24 hours. In other news, Pakistan strongly rejects New Delhi's decision to grant domicile certificates of occupied Kashmir to reportedly 25,000 Indian nationals. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said India's introduction of a new domicile law clearly violates UN Security Council resolutions. It said New Delhi has no legal authority to bring in and settle outsiders to occupy Jammu and Kashmir. The statement said India is trying to change the demography of the occupied territory and turn its people into a minority. The Foreign Office urged the UN and the international community to intervene and stop Indian actions in the valley. It said India's suppression has not been able to break the will of the Kashmiri people, nor will it succeed in doing so in the future. Saudi Arabia says it has forced 3 Iranian boats to retreat from its waters after firing warning shots. State media quoted a border guard spokesman saying the Iranian vessels refused to stop after they entered Saudi waters despite repeated warnings. But the Iranian state media says the Saudi Coast Guard opened fire on fishermen who had strayed into Saudi waters. An Iranian spokesperson said no one was hurt in the incident. Now, the US has condemned the killing of members of Afghanistan's Human Rights Commission, calling the attack anti-human. Washington's envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said those opposed to peace start fires, their hopes spread quickly and smolder indefinitely. Khalilzad said the US supports the overwhelming demand of Afghans to overcome these odds and continue the struggle for peace. 2 employees of the Afghanistan Human Rights Commission were killed in an IED explosion in Kabul yesterday. The Taliban denied involvement in the incident and condemned the attack. The White House says US President Donald Trump was unaware of alleged Russian bounty offers to Afghan militants to kill American troops. The New York Times reported on Friday the Russian military intelligence had secretly incited the Taliban against the Pentagon. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany said President Trump was not briefed on the alleged Russian bounty intelligence. She said the CIA Director, National Security Advisor, and the Chief of Staff can confirm that neither the President nor the Vice President were aware of it. Russia's foreign ministry says the published report was fabricated by the U.S. intelligence agencies. It said the U.S. media's such false publications had already led to direct threats to the Russian diplomats. The U.S. says it has intercepted 4 Russian reconnaissance aircraft near Alaska. This comes after Russia intercepted 3 U.S. biplanes over the Black Sea and escorted them away from its border. The North American Aerospace Defense Command said Russian Tupolev 142 jets came within 65 nautical miles south of Alaska's Aleutian Island chain. The command said the aircraft did not enter the U.S. or Canadian airspace but stayed in the surrounding international airspace for 8 hours. The U.S. and Canadian Joint Command said it was the 10th time this year that it has intercepted Russian military aircraft in the region. In Germany, hundreds of people have rallied against racial injustice in the capital, Berlin. Organizers said the rally was taken out in honor of George Floyd, who was killed by a white police officer in the U.S. Police said at least 1,000 people had gathered in Berlin's massive Tiergarten Park. Calling for change, the protesters said black Germans are confronted with racism on almost everyday basis. The demonstrators said they wanted to draw attention to racism and violence against people of color across Europe. Similar protest rallies were also taken out in London and other parts of the UK. In Poland, people are voting in a presidential election that can place significant curbs on the power of their nationalist government. Opinion polls show the incumbent Andrzej Duda in the lead, but short of a majority needed to avoid a hard-to-win second round of vote on July 12th. Duda is an ally of the ruling Law and Justice Party, and if he loses, the opposition can force a big change in the Polish politics. Europe is watching the polls closely as Duda's allies have frequently clashed with the EU over their controversial reforms to the judiciary and media. The president's main rival, the center-right mayor of Warsaw, Rafał, has promised to repair ties with Brussels. There are 9 other candidates in the race, including Simeon Holonia, presenter of TV show I've Got Talent. The self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic has suspended movement of citizens to Ukraine through the only working checkpoint on the line of contact. In a decree, the DPI head Denis Pushilin accused Ukraine of violating the ceasefire 34 times this week. Earlier, Donetsk opened the Yelenovka checkpoint after a 3-month suspension on June 22nd for exit and on June 25th for entry. Ukraine also opened the checkpoint from its side then. There are 4 checkpoints between Ukraine and the DPR, which have been temporarily closed since March due to COVID-19. In Malawi, opposition alliance leader Lazarus Chakwera has won the presidential election rerun. The Electoral Commission said Chakwera secured the required majority with 58.5% of votes, beating Mutharika. Chakwera said his victory is a win for democracy and justice. His win sparked late-night celebrations on the streets of the capital, Lilongwe, which is the visitors' stronghold. However, incumbent President Peter Mutharika alleged that June 23rd election was marred by irregularities. Mutharika and his Democratic Progressive Party called on the Electoral Commission to annul the results and declare a third election. Thousands in Myanmar's Rakhine state have fled their homes after the village administrator warned them about a military operation. However, a government spokesperson said an evacuation order issued by Border Affairs officials had been revoked. Border Affairs acknowledged issuing the order through the local administrator, but said it affected fewer villages. Meanwhile, in a joint statement, the UK, US and Canadian embassies in Myanmar said they were deeply concerned by the reports of military operations. Sri Lanka has renewed calls for international monetary bodies to provide debt relief for developing countries. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa says a debt moratorium of 2 years is needed to get the country back on track. In a meeting with UN and UNICEF representatives, Rajapaksa said Sri Lanka's vital economic sectors are at serious risk due to the pandemic. He said a debt relief plan will enable developing nations to quickly recover from the impact of the COVID-19. This comes as Sri Lanka and India discuss holding the loan repayment of $960 million that Colombo owes Delhi. Sri Lanka is scheduled to repay $2.9 billion of its total external debt this year. In the US, 2 people have been killed and 4 others wounded in a shooting at a Walmart distribution center in Red Bluff, California. Red Bluff police confirmed the officers on the scene shot the assailant and took him to a hospital. The sheriff's office said the shooter rammed his vehicle into the building and opened fire with a semi-automatic gun. Police said the 31-year-old had a history with the facility, which had about 200 workers inside at the time of the shooting. A hospital spokesperson said 4 wounded are in a fairly stable condition. Meanwhile, 1 person was killed and another injured in a shooting during a protest in the U.S. city of Louisville, Kentucky. We're now taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. Madrid City Hall lit up the skies with drones to pay tribute to COVID-19 victims and frontline workers who fought the virus in Spain. 40 programmed drones with multicolored LED lights shone over Madrid. They created different forms, including a heart and 2 people. They also created messages of hope and flags of other countries fighting the coronavirus pandemic. The location of the performance remained a secret until it took place to avoid crowds and a large gathering. Spain has been one of the worst hit countries from COVID-19, with more than 28,000 deaths and nearly 250,000 cases so far. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.